Radio Raheem here with John David Jackson. Boy, I'll tell you, you're on something of a roller coaster ride, man. No one thought on this day you'd be here with Bernard Hopkins, preparing him for his last fight, his final fight against Joe Smith. What a swing. You got Kovalev, you're fighting a guy who was trying to fight like Hopkins. Now you got Hopkins fighting a guy who's pretty much a square-up fighter like Kovalev. Talk to me about first how this thing came about and why you decided to be in Bernard's camp.
Well, you know, Bernard, we have been crossing paths for the past few months, and it's always been a pleasure of mine when we work together. I worked with him for 6 fights, and the Tower fight and the Pablo fight, I pretty much drew the blueprints for those fights. Those were 2 of his better fights in the last half of his career. So, you know, we're good friends. We go back to when I was champion. He's my chief sparring partner. We sparring partner. We were foes. We fought, and I trained him. So we've had a great relationship for the last 27 years. And so this is just, I guess it's good that he and I would close the show together because we pretty much started together to a degree.
That's great. When you look at this fight, knowing that your fighter is 51, with all that he's accomplished, all the skills that he has, you have to take that into consideration. Is age an issue when facing anybody, even Joe Smith?
Age is definitely an issue. You know, that's a great question. It's always an issue. But most fighters, you know, when they're young, we don't think about it. When you get older, you don't think about it. Maybe a little bit, a tad bit as you get older, but. You know, Bernard has always kept himself in great condition, in great shape, so he hasn't received much punishment, damage in boxing as a lot of fighters have. So he's still, you know, somewhat fresh. He's not, you know, not baby fresh, but he's fresh enough that he has enough experience and knowledge that this fight, well, it should be a difficult fight because Joe was young and strong. Bernard should be able to prevail.
With as long as Bernard's been in this ring and preparing for fights, do you still take the leadership role, like tell him what to do, when to train, how long, or is it something that he just does and you kind of supervise?
A lot of things I don't have to supervise at all. You know, Bernard's a professional. He's been doing this for years. He understands, he knows the game of boxing. So, you know, my part really just come in and maybe refresh him with certain things that he's not doing and remind him of other things that he needs to do. But as far as boxing, I don't need to teach him how to do anything. Once the bell rings, Bernard's going to do what Bernard does best. And for this fight here, it's not much that we have to really do as far as getting Bernard ready. We just have to kind of figure out what Joe's going to do, and he's young and he's strong. We pretty much know what he's going to try to do. You know, he said that the Kovalev fight was the blueprint. Well, guess what? I wrote the blueprint for that fight. So I'm not in that corner again, but Joe's not Sergey. We all know that. So it can be a little different fight for Joe than he really realizes.
What are the threats that Joe brings in the ring? I mean, most people expect this to be somewhat of a mismatch. What is Joe bringing that can actually win this fight?
Well, no, Joe has 2 things going for him: youth and strength. He's very strong and he's young, and he has to be able to somehow use that to his advantage if he can. You know, you have a master crafter's boxman in Bernard. His craftsmanship is great. Joe has to, if he can, use his strength with the youth to his advantage. How he's going to do that, only he knows in his corner. It's going to be a hard task because Bernard's very crafty. But those are the only 2 real strengths that he has, is his youth and his just manpower. But is that enough to beat Bernard? I don't think so, but they think so. After they see the fight, we'll see.
I mean, the irony, it can't be missed, right? Like, it sounds a lot like the way people are shaping up Kovalev Ward. When you say you've built the strategy for Kovalev, which Smith has admitted he's trying to emulate, is it odd for you to now try to break that strategy down with the fighter who's doing what basically Ward did and you guys thought he didn't win him the fight?
Well, you know, you know, that's a good question, but there's 2 different parts to that. First of all, I knew Ward was younger than Bernard. When he doesn't have the same boxing IQ, he has fresher legs. Smith, on the other hand, he might be young like Sergey. He seems strong, but he's not as strong as Sergey. Listen, Sergey is deceptively strong. Trust me. Even Ward found that on the first half of the fight. Smith cannot duplicate what Sergey did because he's not Sergey. Now he can try to emulate a little bit, but it's not going to work for him. So, while Joe may have a good strategy for trying to emulate what Sergey did, he's not Sergey Kovalev, so he can't do what Sergey did. He better do what Joe Smith can do, and hopefully does it well to get him a decision.
Lastly, on this fight, where does Bernard Hopkins, assuming he is victorious Saturday night, rank in your all-time list?
You have to rank Bernard, pretty high on that level. He's the greatest, no, but is he up amongst the great fighters? Yes. You have to at least give him that much respect. He deserves to be up there for what he's accomplished and how long he's been in the game. And for a guy who, when he first started out, no one gave him any chance to get anywhere in boxing. So you have to, with all his achievements, you have to rank him pretty high with all the all-time greats. Maybe not the greatest, but not the worst of the so-called great. He's not a nice place for him in the annals of boxing, because he definitely deserves all the accolades that he's been getting.
Everyone, as soon as the Ward Kovalev fight was over, was clamoring for a rematch. We want to see it again. We want a definitive outcome. And now we've heard Ward in the press talking about possible retirement, and that's got to be frustrating for you. How do you react when you heard that? How did Kovalev react if you talked to him about it?
I haven't talked to Sergey about it. Listen, Andre's going to do what Andre wants to do. If he doesn't want to fight him in the rematch, it'd be nice if he honored the contract and the agreement clause in it, because he deserves to give Sergey a rematch. He didn't win. I don't care what anybody tells. He didn't win that first fight. It wasn't that close as people say to me. I thought Sergey won. I thought he won 8-4, 9-3, but 8-4 at worst. That's what he won. It was up to Ward. I don't know what's going through his mind, his brain, and I'm not going to say anything bad about him. If he wants to retire, that's on him. Maybe there's reasons why he may retire. Promotional things, other things that just for him that may be his best route, and then maybe he make a comeback and try it again. But I think at this stage of his career, he's had a long, lustrous career. I think he's coming to the close because he's going through too many headaches. If it's another contract dispute with his promoters, that's a lot of crap. So if he would come back, give your Sergey a shot. But if not, hey, that's boxing. You do what you have to do for yourself. I'm not going to dog him out.
Are you at all concerned that even if the fight does happen with these, if this could be gamesmanship, right? Maybe this is just a negotiation tactic, but your fighter's lost his first fight technically. He's lost his belts. The mentality and the mental fitness it takes to be a boxer and to get up for these fights, during this time, do you not feel like it's necessary to talk to him and keep his head in the game, keep him positive and not getting frustrated with this process?
Well, Sergey's pretty strong mentally. What I would do is I would just talk to him when we go to camp. Say, listen, hey, you lost this fight. Now you got to regroup. He has to get that hunger and desire back to want to be champion. I'm not saying he lost it. I'm just saying now that he's a challenger again, he has to really train like he's a challenger and want that belt. Because there's a kid out there, I think his name is Beterbiev. Whatever his name is. I'm sorry to pronounce your name right. But he's dangerous. He's young and he's hungry. I'm not saying he's young. He's the same age as Sergey, but he has that young man's hunger and the desire within him. He wants to be champion. And so for Sergey, he needs to get that type of desire once again. Now that he no longer has his belt, hopefully he gets that desire to be champion again.
Well, you think it's a good idea? Would you guys consider, if these negotiations end up taking a long time, playing out, Ward's not committed, will you take a fight in the interim?
He should. He needs to stay sharp and get that sharpness back. So, yeah, an interim fight would be great for him. He needs that.
And lastly, we've now been announced that Anthony Joshua is going to fight Klitschko. Just one of these things that is coming in 2017. It's an anticipated fight. How do you think that fight breaks down?
I haven't really watched Joshua much. Don't watch Klitschko at all. Nothing bad against him. I was going to train him one time, but once I didn't get the call, I left alone. Anthony might be a fresher breath there, a breath of fresh air in boxing. Hopefully, Klitschko, they dominated, they did their thing. So I'm not going to give him say anything bad about him, but it's time for fresh blood. Guys are going to make boxing in the heavyweight division exciting once again.
And lastly, on your analyst skills, what about Garcia Thurman? Are you excited about that fight? You have an opinion?
Not really excited. I like Thurman. They're both warriors. Garcia does it his way. Thurman does it his way. If you can make the fight, make it. That's a fight for the fans, and they deserve that. So if you can make that fight, please make that fight. I just want to see fights in 2017 the fans deserve to see. That's all. Boxing deserves that, and let the best hopefully start fighting the best.
Radio Raheem with John David Jackson. Good luck Saturday night. With the final fight, Bernard Hopkins faces Joe Smith right here at the Great Western Forum used to be. Thanks, man.